Hello and welcome back to another EDH deck design video. Today I'm going to be someone had requested I go ahead and post this deck. It's another one of those thematic self-restricted decks. This deck is a Dimir watermark themed deck. So essentially every single card in the entire deck has to have the watermark for the Dimir guild. If you haven't seen my other videos, I've got currently an Urbrask video posted. There's a couple other decks I've done at the same time. This is I don't remember which other ones I still have, but this is one I will always keep because I put a lot of effort in making it all foil. I've actually had Szadek here as a general in a few different decks, and I've had Circu in a combo deck before as well. But this one is more of a themey deck for role-playing in Magic, or having a more lower-tier power deck for different metas, I guess. But yeah, the deck itself, I usually prefer to run Szadek, because for flavor stance, he's the original Paron of the Dimir guild. Although technically, in multiplayer, Lazav is better, because he has the chance of being a better creature. 1v1 Mirko is better, because he is a flying... and you can kind of capitalize on the mill mechanic a little bit. Being that I'm restricted myself to just the watermark cards, I don't have a very strong win condition. Milling is a possibility, although with so few ways of guaranteeing a mill mechanic to go online, it's not always reliable. Circu is typically not, I just don't use him as a general, unless you're playing an infinite enter the battlefield flicker deck. That's where he's good. Let me go ahead and just run through these guys real quick before we go into the creatures. Circu here is probably he's the most interesting one. He used to be a really good combo general, but I haven't seen many people talk about him recently. I think Jaleva just kind of does what he wants to do a little bit better. But he's 4 mana, 2 blue-black for a 2/3 body. Whenever you, the owner, cast a blue or a black spell, you exile the top card off of target person's deck. And the opponents cannot play non-land cards with the same name of a card exiled with Circu. So ideally in his deck, you want to get the creatures that enter the battlefield and bounce themselves to their hand. There's a Harpy that's blue and black that when it enters you have to bounce, or you can pay life to bounce her. So something like that, an infinite mana, you can just deck everybody by exiling their deck. And that's usually what you see Circu doing. In this deck, he's just there for flavor. Mirko is usually better for 1v1 as, well, before Phonax was printed, he was probably the best mill general, because he's got a flying body, and when he hits you, you essentially mill until you hit 4 lands. 2/4 flying body for 5, not so bad. Lazav is really good for different control styles, or just a generic if you need a blue-black general, because he's a hexproof general, but he's also got the ability to become another creature when it enters someone else's graveyard. But he's still always going to be Lazav. So the deck here is really overcosted. He is 7 mana, 3 blue-black for 5/5 flying. So competitively speaking, he's not good simply because his mana cost, unless of course you're just using him for the colors. The clever thing is when he does damage, you can instead put a amount of +1/+1 counters on him per the damage that would be dealt. So if you were to actually get through with him, you could do 5 damage, or you could instead put 5 counters on him. Then the opponent mills that much. So next turn it could be 10, then 20. In actual play, he's just not fast enough. He's too expensive. And flying at 7 mana is not enough of evasion to guarantee that he's actually going to get through. But he's the original Paron of the Dimir guild, so he's usually the one I play just from a flavor standpoint. If you know much about the lore, while he is physically, his body's gone, it's unknown if his spirit is gone. There's some talk about him possibly still being around. Let's go into the creatures. So every single card in the entire deck has the Dimir watermark, so there's not going to be a lot of overwhelming creatures here. But we have just a lot of small utility guys. The clever thing is the Dimir guild, the original one gave us Transmute, which is a pseudo tutor effect, so I can kind of guarantee the good card sometimes. But also the new Return to Ravnica gave us Cipher, so it's actually really good compared to some of the other guilds when you consider doing EDHs with them. The Cipher and the possible Transmute means you actually have a somewhat reliable deck. So we have a possible flying 2/1. He's a 2-drop for 2/1. You can pay to give him flying. Then we have an informant, which is kind of a mill effect. You pay 2, tap him. Look at you kind of not quite fate seal somebody, but you just look at the top of their deck and you may put in the graveyard. You may mill them. Kind of expensive. I usually just swing with them. This is one of the really good cards in the deck, simply because it's a transmute for 2, which means we can get like our Hands of Binding. But it's also an unblockable, a 1/3. So something like this is actually a really good start. We also have a little bit of protection and good evasion there. We have a fun guy that helps to burn people whenever you mill. The new guy here is pretty clever. I really like his artwork too. I like the fact that they kind of kept this guy with the original Dimir Guildmage's artwork as well. This guy doesn't really help us mill. It's more or less a very slow discard or draw ability, but again, in a very slow game, this guy can really help you turn around. Very good defender, very cheap, but also that transmute for 3. So there's a lot of stuff in here. I'll try to capitalize the important transmute targets when we get to it. So far we have a transmute for 2 and a transmute for 3. This is more of a, it's not going to do a whole bunch. It may end up drawing you an extra card essentially after 2 turns, but she's just there for filler. Cut Purse is another really good creature. If you can get some kind of unblockable through, there's not a lot of ways of doing that in this deck, but he himself is just really good advantage. Makes people not want to swing all out and always leave some kind of blocker up. Doppelganger here is really good for stopping an Eldrazi or something that may cause a reshuffle if you're going for the mill. This is something that you may actually want to tutor up for 3 mana simply because it can target and stop some kind of shuffle effect that's going to stop you from milling somebody out. Mortis Strider is just a cute card. It just tends to not go away. Another one of our unblockable ones, well, somewhat unblockable. There's not a lot of rogues. Very rarely will anyone actually try to block it, even if they forget the clause there. But he's just usually a 2/2 unblockable. Here's a card that everyone probably remembers from about 6 months ago. Nightville Spectre is fantastic. We got a nice flying body and a possible to play cards off the top of people's decks. Although in EDH I can't, even if I get their land, it's still going to produce blue or black or colorless. This is something you usually see kind of in a combo deck where you need a sack outlet, but we have a transmute effect for 4 now, so we're on 2, 3, and 4. The Fear also is another unblockable tech. Duskmantle Seer is cute. It's like Bob, or a Dark Confidant for everybody. There's not a lot of super expensive cards in this deck, so it's decent, but at the same time making your opponent's draw is not always so decent in a 40-life format. But I mean, 4/4/4/4 flying with a bad upkeep, 4/4/4 for flying with a bad upkeep. Again, 40-life format, this one's not so bad. It's really cute to see power creep here when something like this used to be really good. Notion Thief is something you usually see in like a Nekasar deck. A lot of people get confused on the ruling here. Essentially, it's any time they would draw, because you got the wording is very specific. If an opponent would draw a card except the first one he or she draws in each of his or her draw steps, the key there is the word draw steps. Instead, they skip that draw and you draw. So essentially, anytime someone tries to draw an extra card, you get it. The underlying confusion is that the words draw steps right there. That's the clause. Not the clause, but that's the part you need to keep in mind. Tattered Drake is kind of a generic flyer, not super exciting. This is probably the best win condition of the deck, simply because it's something that's 5. We can tutor for it. I believe there's another Transmute for 5 card too. It gets humongous in multiplayer, and essentially there's lots of super cheap spells in this deck, so he can actually start milling a lot more than, say, like this guy. So this is probably the primary win condition of the deck. Another generic filler that makes the opponents, it's kind of the, what is that rock from Shards of Alara? There's an artifact that does the exact same thing. Although the Shards one is more interesting because you can usually make copies of it a lot easier than this guy. Here's another Transmute for 6. I don't really know what I usually Transmute for 6 for. I usually like this more for the unblockable. I really like the artwork here. Netherborn Phalanx is another Transmute 6. This one's cute to kind of jump for when someone's trying to play in token army, so something you might want to hold back on. But he also has a nice butt there too to kind of be defensive, I guess. Denrova Horror is kind of the what's that instant card that does that I like a lot? Not Repulse. Is it repulse? Anyways, there's an instant card that does the same thing he does. Bounce a permanent, and the opponent discards a card. And nice because you can hit anything. And the biggest creature in the deck is the Mind Leech Mass. Nice 6/6 trample body. He's super expensive though, 8 mana. This is the most expensive card in the deck. Again, this may be the win condition if we just can't do anything else. We have to go for like physical damage. But his ability to play something from their hand is actually really nice. Same effect that's on the new Ninja, well, not new anymore, the Plane Chase Ninja Demon guy. Let's go on to the spells. This is kind of an interesting card. It's one that sometimes I don't really know what to do with half the time. There's nothing really I can transmute for 1/4. I can't transmute for 0, which sucks. So the transmute sucks. This is usually just something to kind of slow down damage and maybe help trade a creature with one of my weaker creatures. Far and away is a fantastic card. Just infusing it in something like that, it's really nice. Shred Memory is another graveyard tech if someone has a recycle effect. Again, you can transmute for 2 here, so I can try and get like a counterspell. Shadow of Doubt is one of my favorite cards ever printed. I love it in Modern just about everywhere I play it. It's usually 2 mana to sinkhole somebody's lands when they crack a fetch land and you draw a card so it replaces itself. But I mean, this could also be anything like Stopping a Tooth and Nail, and it's super good. Counters instant or sorcery, transmutes 2. May need to just go get something like this. Usually I'll actually use this or the, well, I usually hold on to this one, but I usually use this to go try and get the unblockable guy in an early game. A very awkward removal sometimes, or an awkward pump sometimes. This may be something I want to put on Szadek to get extra counters on him. This is kind of like our best removal in the game. It's not really good removal. That's kind of what we have to deal with. Dimir Charm is a possible removal and a sorcery target, or a counter, and I don't really use the mill part on it there. Perplex is a transmute 3. It's fun to cause people to consider discarding their whole hand to counter something. Usually they will just let this spell be countered though. Another hard counter that mills a little bit. A hard counter that mills a lot, usually. A nice bounce because again it bounces anything, but this also lets us transmute for 4. Hands of Binding is one of the best cards in the deck to get on one of the unblockable guys early. Something like this can lock a lot of stuff down, especially when I'm trying to get out for actual Mirko or Szadek connections there. We have another Cipher card. This is kind of not super exciting, just the potential to mill 3 extra. So this usually ends up milling 6. Here's your normal staple. I might end up posting my Modern mill deck shortly. But this is just the epitome of a milled card. 2 mana equates to 10. There's a 1 mana costing card that does 5. There's the new Breaking Entering. It's not new anymore. There's Breaking Entering that also costs blue and black that does 8. But this is the staple. This one is, honestly, I almost never do. This is a transmute for 3 card. Like the sorcery card here to look at someone's top 3 and exile. It's almost never happened. I don't think I've ever done it once. Even when someone's like top deck tutored, I'd never actually had the chance to cast it. So this is usually just a transmute for 3. Pilfer Plans is cute. It's kind of just a mill 2 draw 2. It's like, I like the fact that I have a version of Divination in here. I kind of wish it did more than just mill 2 though. I Consult the Necro Sages is awesome. It's Divination or a Mind Rot. Last Thoughts is just usually a spell that's going to draw me 1 or 2 cards on the same turn before the creature dies. Same thing. It's a very poor quality Mind Rot. Usually the creature's going to die immediately. Just a very slow recursion spell. Usually this is going to bounce 1 creature back because I'm most likely, if I'm getting creatures back from my graveyard, I'm probably not going to be able to swing in. Now this one's really fun because I can put this onto the flyer that it creates. I can cipher it directly onto the token. I can't immediately swing and get a second token though, but still. A wheel effect is sometimes useful in mill, simply because I'm wrecking their hand a little bit. And this is usually going to mill a lot more since I will try to hold on to it till I can guarantee a connection. Another sort of removal. I mean, 4 damage for 5 mana is not super good, but it typically replaces itself. Another super situational card, something that I just don't often like seeing. I mean, most of the time if you're going up against a control deck, they're going to have like 8 creatures in their deck. But of course, if you're going up against like the Gruul player, there's a good chance you'll draw like 3 or 4 cards. Brain Spoil is another transmute for 5. I usually like to keep it just for the actual removal though. I mean, it still has a restriction there. I mean, an enchanted creature, that doesn't happen too often, but it's still a good removal. 5 mana sucks up. Sorcery speed, that is. This is another one of the really good cards in the deck, a possible clone, where I can potentially get a second clone right after. This is kind of the backup win condition. It's kind of like a one-sided smallpox effect. Not quite hitting a land and everything, but I mean, it sacks a permanent. Usually this hits for 2, since I will try to hold on to it to have an unblockable creature. So this is kind of our backup win condition, just to kind of grind them out. Although something like this kind of does put a big target on you in multiplayer and 1v1. This is not a good deck for 1v1. The strength of the deck itself, it's a thematic deck though. Now this is an overcosted card. I really love the flavor on this card though. 6 to make a target player sack a creature, so it's an edict effect, but you draw cards for the creature's power. The actual flavor on this card is fantastic. The art, I don't know if you can see very clearly, but there's a judge with kind of a specter in the background controlling his hand, which is super sweet, and the actual flavor text talks about how the judge wanted to do a ruling, but he didn't do the exact ruling. Mind Grind is our big X spell of the deck. Well, we have 2 actually. This one hits a lot more than this one. This is just mills X cards, gain X life. This mills X lands. Let's go on. There's not a whole bunch of permanents past lands and the creatures. We have 1 enchantment in the Dimir guild. It is Soul Ransom. It's fun because it nets me card advantage, and sometimes I don't know. I'm trying to think if this actually works or not, if you can sacrifice the creature if they pay the ability. Once they pay the ability, you can sack the creature, and I think you still get the cards. I don't know. I'd have to check on that. But I mean, it's a kind of a cute mind control card where people can do card disadvantage, and yeah. Then we have 3 ramps. We have a Signet, which is a good ramp, a Key Rune, which is a decent ramp in some decks, and then we have a Cluestone, which is a terrible ramp. And then the final one is the Bloodletter's Quill. Each guild has a special artifact in the original set. This one's really cool because in EDH, it lets me draw a whole bunch of cards. When looking at all the possible guilds, when considering making an EDH deck like Watermark out of them, a lot of them don't have suitable tech. I actually have the Rakdos collection. I guess I could make a deck out of it too, but it's not playable. Something like this, because I have things like this, is actually playable. But then we have lands, lots and lots of lands. There's not a lot of non-basics to pick from. We literally are just running all of the non-basics. So we have the original one. They had an uncommon where we can pay 2 to mill 1. Not super good, especially after the there's that one in Avison, the Dark Ascension block that does it. It's just better. Then we have our Shock. We have our Bounce Land. I normally don't like Bounce Lands because in my play group it's competitive, and the thematic groups, something like this doesn't really benefit the deck too much. I have a Tap Land, and the rest of them are actually, I've been collecting these for a long time, the Watermark lands themselves. In Japan, I think it was a pre-release card where you could get a match set of the lands per the guild you picked. So every single one of these is a swamp that goes with the House Dimir, and then we have the islands that go with the House Dimir. So yeah, the whole deck's full. Every card has the watermark. That's nifty and cute. There are other cards I could have put in here, and there's a few extras because there's some promo cards. For example, there's a promo Dimir Guild, and there's a promo Nightfell Spectre. Horror the Dim could have gone main deck, but he is overcosted for a possible pay-to-give hexproof. His body isn't big enough, I think, for his mana cost. There's a special Consuming Aberration. Grizoth is a transmute for 9. There's no other card in the guild that costs 9 mana. I mean, the other big guy costs 8. If he costs 9, I would actually consider running this so I can tutor him up. But I mean, he's also, I have to pay to make him be able to even attack. So I mean, a big body, not, he didn't, I don't want it. There's a promo charm. Another card that could have been in here is changing the colors. This is not super good unless, like, I was considering doing the Is It one, because, like, again, it doesn't have a lot of good win conditions, but you can get the guy where you can exile spells on the stack, and then you can replicate the spells, so you can potentially have a really big guy. Something like that would have fit in that deck, but I mean, I kind of wish this was not... I guess the flavor fits Dimir more than Is It. I don't know. Another card that could have been in here is tapping a permanent. I've been on the fence about putting this one in the deck simply because it may help me get through once. I don't think it... I don't know. Void Walk is a possible exile flicker effect where I can cipher. Something like this I really wish was an instant. I know all the ciphers are sorcery, but this should have been an instant speed one. But I don't have a lot of enter the battlefield trigger stuff, so it doesn't really fit the deck. Shadow Slice, losing 3 life for 5 mana at sorcerer speed is, again, terrible. Reap Intellect is a cute X card. I guess I couldn't run it main deck just to exile someone's hand, but being that I'm not really searching up playsets in EDH, it's pointless to run main deck. Then there's the alternate art for the Guildgate, and we have some tokens for that one thing. But yeah, this is the Dimir watermark deck. Again, this is another kind of a rare deck I don't get a chance to play very often because it is a thematic deck where I usually try to role play with it. In my group where we do role playing, I usually run my Urbrask deck because it can sometimes put up a better defense. Something like this I have a potential to mill out, I have the potential to draw and tutor for a lot of cards and actually kind of do what I need to do. But at the same time, it's not as efficient and not as fast as I like. And I really like blue-black, so running something like this kind of just puts a bad feeling in my mouth. Like, it's very fun to play thematic decks, and it's beautiful to hold 99 cards that are foil and have a little matching watermark. But, I mean, the play group itself is the defining clause of the deck. So if you are interested in having, like, weaker decks or doing themes, like, you can technically pick up... Like, I even priced the Is It deck. Except for Steam Vents and, like, 1 or 2 cards, I can get the entire Is It deck, non-foil, for, like, $30. This deck right here is more expensive because Water Gray is more expensive than Steam Vents, and then there's the Glimpse the Unthinkable, and Shadow of Doubt is still kind of, like, 10, 20, something like that right now. But still, yeah, if this was not a foil deck and I took those 3 cards out, again, this would be like a $30 deck. But yeah, these are super fun, and it's super beautiful too. My friend had done this with the Orzhov deck, and while I really like how the black and blue cards look with gold border, I will admit that his deck looked a lot better. He also foiled out his entire deck. He didn't get the Gucci lands, he was using the pre-release lands that we got for Return to Ravnica. But his entire deck was also foil, and the Orzhov deck with gold borders, that looked really good. I kind of wish he still had that, because that honestly was a really awesome looking deck, and it played out very smoothly too. But yeah, if you enjoy goofy little thematic decks like this, then definitely share. I know this isn't for everyone, and it's not super competitive, and it's kind of past being thematic.